Welcome to this e-learning module by Department of Commerce with the All India Institute of Ayurveda, New Delhi. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic that is known as rabies. So rabies is primarily a zoonotic disease which is transmitted to humans usually by bite of an infected animal, mainly dogs. Other common household animals responsible which can transmit this dreadful rabies are cats, cattle and pigs, and among wild animals are mongoose and jackals. So human rabies is highly endemic throughout the mainland of India, with islands of Andaman and Nicobar in the east and Lakshadweep in the west being rabies free. If you see the epidemiology, according to World Health Organization, there are about 17 million animal bite cases in India every year, out of which nearly 20,000 deaths occur due to rabies. Unfortunately, most of the rabies deaths, that is approximately about 35%, are in children. The reason being, the short stature of the children leads to more bites in the upper part of the body, which leads to shorter time for the virus to reach the brain. Moreover, playful nature and tendency to tease animals make them more vulnerable. Softer skin results in more severe injury, and finally, they do not inform about the injuries because of the fear of painful injections. This rabies disease is mainly transmitted through bites and scratch from infected animals. Apart from this, leaks on broken skin or intact mucous membrane may also transmit rabies. Rare cause of transmission include aerosol transmission in bat infested caves and human to human transmission by organ transplant, mainly corneal transplant. Regarding the etiopathogenesis, rabies is a viral disease. So this rabies virus is a single-stranded ribonucleic acid virus, that is RNA virus, belonging to the genus Lissa virus in the family Rhabdoviridae. This rabies virus is a neurotrophic virus having a phospholipid envelope. The virus is rapidly inactivated by soap and detergents, oxidizing agents, and quaternary ammonium compounds. So let us now discuss how this rabies enters the body and what is the etiopathogenesis, how the rabies virus enters the central nervous system. Now, once it enters the human body, it first replicates in muscle in and around the wound. So it starts replicating around the wound in the muscle tissues. Then, as it gains access to the nerve endings, it starts ascending passively in the isoplasm of the nerves. So you see, it starts ascending. On reaching the dorsal root ganglia, there is further replication and the virus transverses further to the anterior cells of the spinal cord. So once the central nervous system is involved, there is rapid and extensive replication of the virus. And after the infection of the central nervous system, further dissemination of the virus to the extra central nervous system sites occurs. For example, salivary glands via the cranial nerves. So this is the basically the pathogenesis of the rabies virus after its entry through the wound. Now we will discuss the incubation period. So the incubation period of the rabies is highly variable. It may be as brief as 4 days to as long as 3 years, with average being 3 weeks to 3 months. So this means that the incubation period is highly variable. So if now we can discuss the clinical features of the rabies. So there are two distinct clinical forms of rabies. The first one is furious rabies or encephalitic type, and it accounts for about 80% of cases. The second clinical form is known as dumb rabies or the paralytic type, and it accounts for about 20% of the cases. Means that majority of the cases of rabies are of encephalitic type. So in both the types of rabies, the initial presentation of the disease may be non-specific. It may start with general malaise, headache, fever, and some patients may complain of numbness or tingling sensation at the bite site. Now, in case of furious type of or the encephalitic type of rabies, symptoms are related to the spasm of the gullet with hydrophobia, aerophobia, dysphagia, and other aggressiveness, which ultimately leads to coma and death, usually due to respiratory failure. In contrast, in the paralytic type of rabies, it starts with ascending paralysis of lower limbs. The patient lives longer with gradual involvement of abdominal muscles, upper limb, and respiratory muscle, leading to death due to respiratory failure. Now, how to diagnose this case of rabies? So, rabies diagnosis of rabies is mainly clinical. So, laboratory tests may be required in some atypical cases, like ante-mortem diagnosis is by detection of virus or viral antigen in saliva or cerebrospinal fluid. The viral nucleic acids may be detected in infected tissue by reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction analysis. In some cases, serological assays to detect antibodies to rabies virus are used for diagnostic, epidemiological, and to assess immunological response following vaccination. Postmortem diagnosis by demonstration of Negri bodies in brain tissue is pathognomic of rabies. So in this figure, the arrow mark, you can see the Negri bodies in the neurons. These are the Negri bodies in the neurons. So these Negri bodies in the brain tissue is considered pathognomic of rabies. Now let us come to the management part of the rabies. How rabies can be managed. So it has to be remembered that once symptoms of rabies have developed, neither rabies vaccine nor rabies immunoglobulin will improve the prognosis, and there is no specific treatment. So in rabies endemic country like India, every animal bite is suspicious and treatment should be started immediately. As the incubation period is in rabies is long, it is possible to administer prophylactic post-exposure treatment early enough before the virus reaches the nervous system. So before starting the treatment, it is important to categorize the exposure which has been recommended by World Health Organization. So you can see the category of exposure is of three types. One is category 1, category 2 and category 3. So in category 1, if a patient has been touched or feeded by animal, leaks on intact skin, contact of intact skin with secretions or excretion of a rabid animal or a person, so it is regarded as a no, it is regarded as not an exposure. Therefore, no post-exposure prophylaxis is required. So there is no requirement of post-exposure prophylaxis in category 1 type of exposure. So in category 2, there is nibbling of uncovered skin, minor scratches or abrasions without bleeding. So in this type of exposure, so the prophylaxis is through wound management plus vaccine should be administered. That is anti-rabies vaccine should be administered. So in category 3, there is single or multiple transdermal bites or scratches, leaks on broken skin, contamination of mucous membrane with saliva from leaks and exposure to bats or dog. So in this case, the post-exposure prophylaxis is to number one is wound management plus administration of anti-rabies vaccine plus administration of rabies immunoglobulin. So these are the basic categories of exposure, and accordingly post-exposure prophylaxis has to be done. Now we will discuss what is this post-exposure prophylaxis. Now As you see, the post-exposure prophylaxis has three main modalities. All these three modalities are of equal importance and should be followed meticulously. Now, the first modality is management of wound. The second important step is passive immunization through administration of rabies immunoglobulin. And third part is active immunization through administration of anti-rabies vaccine. Now, we will first discuss about the first modality of management of rabies, that is management of wound. So as the virus remains localized in the site of bite for some time, cleaning of the wound should be done even if the patient presents late. Immediate washing and flushing the wound with soap and water or water alone is essential. It should be followed by disinfection with either ethanol or iodine. Suturing of the wound should be avoided, but if it is necessary, loose sutures are applied following infiltration of rabies immunoglobulin. Administration of tetanus toxoid or tetanus immunoglobulins or both should be done as the condition demands. Now the second part is the second modality of management of post-exposure prophylaxis is administration of rabies immunoglobulin, that is passive immunization. So there are two types of rabies immunoglobulins. One is equine rabies immunoglobulin ERIG and other is human rabies immunoglobulin, that is HRIG. These both options are available in India. Now ERIG means equine rabies immunoglobulin is derived from horses, and as the name suggests, HRIG or human rabies immunoglobulin is derived from humans. Now, these two options are there. The equine rabies immunoglobulin, that is immunoglobulin that is derived from horse origin. Now it requires pre-administration sensitivity testing. You have to test the equine rabies immunoglobulin because it may lead to anaphylactic shock. So it has to be tested first intradermally. But HRIG, that is human rabies immunoglobulin, does not require prior sensitivity testing. The HRIG and ERIG that is available in the concentration, ERIG is concentration availability of concentration in 300 international unit per ml, whereas HRIG is available in a concentration of 150 IU per ml. So the total dose of ERIG and HRIG is 40 international unit per kg for ERIG and 20 international unit per kg for HRIG, with a maximum of 3000 international unit for ERIG and maximum of 1500 international unit for HRIG. So the total calculated dose should be infiltrated into and around the wounds, and the remaining amount, if any, must be administered by deep intramuscular injection at a site distant from the vaccine site. Now, if the rabies immunoglobulin is not administered along the vaccine, it can be started up to the 7th day following the vaccination. Thereafter, the vaccine itself elicits an adequate antibody response. So, there are certain points which has to be remembered during administration of rabies immunoglobulin, that it should never be administered at the same anatomical site or in the same syringe as the vaccine, because it may compromise the reactivity of the rabies immunoglobulin. The rabies immunoglobulin should be never administered intravenously. Transient tenderness at injection site or mild fever may occur following rabies immunoglobulin therapy, and it does not require any treatment. Now the third modality of our management of post-exposure prophylaxis is administration of anti-rabies vaccine, which is a form of active immunization. So active immunization against rabies is by administration of either cell culture rabies vaccine, that is CCRV, or purified duck embryo vaccine, that is PDEV. So different vaccines are available in our country, particularly cell culture vaccines which are available in India are HDCV, that is human diploid cell vaccine, PCECV, that is purified chick embryo cell vaccine, PVRV, that is purified varicella rabies vaccine, and of course purified duck embryo vaccine. These all options are available for active immunization purpose. So all the cell culture vaccines are in freeze-dried lyophilized form, and all these cell culture vaccines should be stored and transported at a temperature range of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. So the storage temperature is and transport temperature is should be maintained between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Now this lyophilized vaccine, cell culture lyophilized vaccine, should be administered after reconstitution with diluents provided immediately prior to use. Under no circumstances reconstituted vaccine should be kept for more than 6 to 8 hours. So these points have to be remembered, because sometimes the reconstituted vaccine is kept for a prolonged period, it may be dangerous. So it should not be kept for more than 6 to 8 hours. So interswitching between different cell cultures vaccines is not recommended. For example, you are using at the first dose you used human diploid cell vaccine, you should not change this to purified chick embryo cell vaccine or change to purified varicella rabies vaccine. If you are starting with HDCV type of vaccine, that is human diploid cell vaccine, you should continue with that uh, cell culture vaccine. Interswitching between the different cell culture vaccine is not recommended. However, under unavoidable conditions, different brand may be used to complete the post-exposure prophylaxis. Now, we have to understand what is the vaccine regimen. When to administer the vaccines, we have to understand that. So, rabies vaccine may be used either by intramuscular regimen or intradermal regimen. So there are two regimens. One is intramuscular and other is intradermal. So let us discuss what is the intramuscular regimen. So the intramuscular regimen, the dose of the all the cell culture vaccine is same irrespective of age or body weight of the child. So the vaccine should not be administered in the gluteal region. So intramuscular gluteal region should be avoided, because the fat present in the gluteal region impairs the absorption of antigen with impaired immune response. So in infants and small children, anterolateral aspect of the thigh, and in older children, deltoid region is the ideal site of the vaccination. So there are two schedules of the vaccination which can be followed. The first schedule is known as SN schedule and second schedule is known as Zagreb schedule. In SN schedule, there are 5 dose intramuscular regimen given as a single injection on day 0, day 3, day 7, day 14 and day 28. The Zagreb schedule consists of 4 dose intramuscular regimen given as 2 doses on day 0 on either deltoid or anterolateral thigh, followed by 1 dose on day 7 and 1 on day 21. Remember, the day 0 is the first day of vaccination and not the days of rabies exposure. So this is the intramuscular regimen. Similarly, if you go for intradermal regimen, so this regimen requires considerably less amount of vaccine. So the advantage is the reduction in the volume of the vaccine required, and obviously vaccine cost is reduced by around 60 to 80%. Vaccine which are approved by the Drug Control General of India should be used. So all the vaccines mentioned previously are approved by DGCI except human diploid cell vaccine and PDEV, that is purified duck embryo vaccine. These two vaccines are not recommended for intradermal regimen. So these vaccines are to be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade after reconstitution and should be used within 8 hours. So dose of this vaccine through intradermal regimen is 0.1 ml of vaccine irrespective of reconstituted volume is administered intradermally per site. Actually, this regimen requires trained staff, and the main advantage is it is economically viable. So there are two regimens for administering this type of vaccine through intradermal regimen. So the two regimens which are currently used are, one is updated Thai Red Cross schedule and second one is Thai Red Cross schedule. In updated Thai Red Cross schedule, there are two doses of 0.1 ml of vaccine at different sites, that is one on each deltoid area, administered intradermally on day 0, day 3, day 7 and day 28. Remember, day 0 is the first day of vaccination and not the day of rabies exposure. And the second regimen is Thai Red Cross schedule. So this schedule is same as the previous one, excepting a single dose administered on day 28 and day 90. So former schedule is preferred, that is updated Thai Red Cross schedule is preferred because the chances of dropouts is much higher in Thai Red Cross schedule. Now this is the post-exposure prophylaxis. Now we'll discuss the pre-exposure vaccination. Now, as you know that children or pediatric age group constitute special risk group for rabies exposure, and this rabies is uniformly fatal. Thus, active consideration should be given to vaccinate children in endemic country like India, where children are often come in contact with stray and pet dogs. So vaccine is usually administered from 3 years of age when they start playing in streets and parks. Now for this pre-exposure prophylaxis, the vaccine schedule for intramuscular regimen is 3 doses of vaccine on day 0, 3 and day 28. And if the pre-exposure is given through intradermal regimen, the 3 doses of vaccine, that is 0.1 ml single dose, should be given on day 0, day 7 and day 28. So remember, day 0 is the first day of vaccination and not the day of rabies exposure. Recently, Indian Academy of Pediatrics has recommended the pre-exposure prophylaxis routinely for children who are of high risk category. They include children having pets at home, or who are perceived with higher threat of being bitten by dogs like hostelers. So this is the pre-exposure vaccination. So with this we conclude this very important topic, rabies. Thank you very much.